want to say, like, this room is amazing, and I'm having fantasies right now, like Law and Order, kind of like pacing back and forth. But now I see there's a pedestal, and I'm wearing heels, so if I all of a sudden just kind of like fall over, it's just another day. So, but I'm Julia Barrett. I'm the Global Program Director for Salesforce for Startups, which is still a relatively new program, but I'm pretty excited to see where we've taken it even in the last year. I know you guys have already answered a few questions, but I'll ask a couple more, just to kind of get you guys really stoked on this whole talk here. How many of you use Yelp? Yeah, how many of you have actually written a Yelp review? All right, that's good. How many of you use Amazon reviews to guide every single purchasing decision? Whether or not you use Amazon to make that purchase. So I think everyone knows how important it is to have customer reviews. And it's the most easiest way to think about this is in terms of an actual product. Because you yourself, you're going to throw your money out there. I'm going to pick up on the last talk. If you're buying a camera, you want to make sure it's the right camera. So obviously, like, that's the most it's the most common use case that I think everyone is familiar with. When I started my career, I started it in finance. I worked on a trading floor, worked with financial advisors. And the nature of that game, you can't share customer information. You can't tell other customers what other customers are doing. So for years of my career, this just wasn't even something that I thought about. And even like referencing, I mean, Amazon just didn't even exist then. I am older than I think. But it's one of those things that I didn't actually start my career thinking was important. And when I moved into e-commerce a few years later, all of a sudden, like, this realization that, like, this is the information that's important. If we aren't helping people understand why they want our service or why they want our product, we're in big trouble. There's no way that we're going to close any kind of sale. Whether it's C2C, B2C, B2B, whatever it is, you're not going to close that sale. So my world changed drastically when I had this, groundbreaking realization, which I think in 2005, relatively, it's okay that that was a new realization for me. But online or offline, service or product, the customer story is key. And I'm going to keep repeating myself because it's just the only point that you need to kind of take away from this. It doesn't matter. It can be daunting sometimes. And I talk to startups all the time who are like, oh, I understand that I need customer stories, but we don't have time to put together a case study. Like, I don't even know how to put together a case study. Just get a quote. Like, start small. It doesn't have to be like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Pull a quote from your customers. Put together a one-paragraph story. Go crazy and do a video, sure, but start somewhere. So for me, when I started in the e-commerce world, I'm also, by the way, I'm going old school here, no deck. Not big on PowerPoint. But I do believe in storytelling, so we'll see how well I do today. But when I started in e-commerce, I started at a company called Shopzilla in Los Angeles. And Shopzilla was a comparison search engine, not anything exciting at this point in time. But at that time, it was interesting. And we had both a B2B relationship, we had B2C relationships, we had a lot to balance there. And while we were trying to figure out, like, how do we grow, how do we deliver better traffic to our merchants, we had to think through product reviews. Like, do we buy product reviews from another engine? Do we curate and provide our own product reviews within our own engine? And so I actually built a whole product review collection engine as a prototype. Unfortunately, we ended up integrating other people's reviews. I spent a lot of time on that, but we didn't use it. But one of the things that we really did learn was we'd integrated something at our point of sale point. So we'd extract what we called raves at the time, product raves, right at the point of sale. So, like, what excited you about this product? Why did you ultimately buy this product, like, right now? And then we would follow up a few weeks later with the actual product review survey. So we had two different, very distinct pieces of information that were really important. And I kind of collected the raves because I also thought they were interesting. I just thought they were kind of fun content for our website. But they ended up being really, really useful because our merchants were curious in that too. Like, how is it that they had presented this product that inspired the purchase? Like, why is it that that customer ultimately bought it? And that, again, like, you'd start to get more and more customer feedback that way. So this is kind of where I started, like, thinking, like, customer information really is that important. Our merchants care, and they're a customer of ours, and also our customers care. And when we're able to integrate that content onto our website, it then inspires additional sales. So I was able to see that products that we integrated that content, that customer feedback onto, actually started to do better than those that we didn't. So this is kind of my first foray into this world. And at that same time, Amazon was looking into, like, or the brick and mortar stores were actually trying to figure out, how do we fight Amazon? Like, how do we battle? How do we win? And at that time, they were adding QR codes onto shelves. So you could be in the store and, like, figure out, like, what the best online price was, or are you really getting the best price? And product review content. And product review content was the #1 thing they wanted. They wanted to buy my product review content even. So again, just ingrained in me, it's important to think about, like, what is it that other customers are saying? Because you as a consumer are thinking about this. Again, whether it's a service or a product. I then moved over to eBay. And I've been an eBay user since it launched, and I can tell you all sorts of crazy stories from the 90s around that. But I still, to this day, sell on eBay. And on eBay, like, your seller ratings, for instance, one of the most important factors. Like, no one's going to buy from you if you have 0. No one's going to buy from you if you have negative. So from a seller perspective, and again, that's a customer of eBay, the seller perspective, this is very important. And from eBay's side, it's like, how do we attract new sellers? Like, how do we keep bringing in new sellers across our entire, website globally? And the way that they do that, they host big seller events, and they share other sellers' stories. So this past week, I like to shop a lot. And so I also, though, I kind of tell myself, like, oh, if you're going to buy these shoes, you have to get rid of a pair, which I think a lot of people say, but I actually do it. And my latest big project that, like, I know Melanie over here, she knows this story. I'm very proud of this. I sold a pair of very worn out shoes on eBay, which I know might be gross, but I did it. And I did it for $141. And I did it because I know, I cheated a little. I'm an ex-eBay employee, I know these things. But I know them because I also attended our seller events. Like, I know what we're telling sellers and what we're teaching sellers. And the keywords, super important. So I'm sharing this story with you because I knew that my keywords for my seller event would help me sell these shoes for an insane price. And it's these types of stories that eBay makes sure that every seller hears. They're constantly ensuring that each seller knows, like, hey, like, this is our latest success story. This guy did this. This guy launched an entire, pipe store from his basement over in Omaha. And, like, that's a success story. And they're constantly drilling these stories into their customers because they constantly need new sellers. So this was really important at eBay. So moving on from e-commerce, this is something that, it's just, I spent 7 years, I think, in e-commerce. So again, like, ingrained in me. Again, online or direct, product or service, it's super key. Like, you need these types of customer stories. And you have to think about it creatively. Like, again, like a consumer product, it's kind of easy. You can think about that. Like, I'm going to review this camera. It either worked well or it didn't. The merchant who sold it to me was either good or they weren't. It's sometimes a little bit harder when you move into, like, direct sales. But almost twice as important, you might even argue in some cases. The other side of it, if you're able to feature your customer, if you're able to kind of wave that seller's flag, like, how cool is that? Like, that promotes them, it gets them excited about your product. So you're kind of building a whole other, like, evangelism system. You're building free content for your marketing and PR teams. And as a small company, you kind of have to, like, kill as many birds with one stone as you can. And for me, and even, like, with our Salesforce for Startups program, we're a very small team. I have no time during my day. But if I can just get one story, I know I can use it in, like, 6 different ways, and I've got a new evangelist. So if you're a small startup and you have minimal, like, marketing services or even expertise, I honestly tell people all the time, the easiest and best way that you could focus in and just, like, spend 1 hour figuring out a customer story that you can start to wave. Like, it leaps and bounds, like, it totally the right way to spend your time. And again, you're building an evangelist who's then going to tell their friends, like, oh, check this out. Like, I love this product. They love me. So you have to think about it that way. So for Salesforce, and this is going to sound cheesy, but there's truly nothing more important than our customer success for us. Like, obviously, we sell, it's technical. It's a business software. So for us, like, there's nothing really exciting going on there. Like, it's really difficult to be like, hey, check out this new camera, it's amazing. Instead, it's like, hey, like, I know all of your data, it's just a mess over there, isn't it? You should put it in our CRM system. Or like, hey, you've got marketing problems to solve, use our tools. Like, yeah, that's great, tell me why, because this guy already told me that, like, they also do the same thing. You know, tell me why you're good. Tell me why I should believe that you're the right software. And so at Salesforce, every single member of our sales team is a storyteller. Like, you will fail if you cannot tell stories. In fact, you're not even allowed to try to sell until you can tell 5 different stories in 5 different ways. And everyone in your company should know at least one story. You know, you should be close enough to your data, close enough to your customers to be able to tell that story. So even when your most junior employee is walking down the street and someone asks them, oh, where do you work? Oh, what do you do? Like, what is that? If they can just tell that one customer story, it starts to make sense to other people. They start to get it. When I'm walking down the street, and I've been trained on this, they tell me what I'm supposed to say, and nobody knows, nobody understands that. When someone asks me, like, what's Salesforce do? It's so much easier for me to be like, oh, well, so this company, they do this, 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 and that's how they use our software. Oh, okay. That makes sense to me. If I start telling them about, oh, we launched our CRM platform in 1990, like, nobody cares. So it's something to think about. Like, make sure that you've enabled all of your company to tell some kind of fun story. At Salesforce, we have the luxury of, we have so many different customers. We have so many customer stories at this point. We have the luxury of kind of picking and choosing which stories we like best that resonate with you as like something that you kind of identify with personally. So it makes it a little bit easier. And that's maybe the aspiration, right? The aspiration is to have 50 customer stories you can pull from. But again, like, start simple. Start with a quote. If everyone in your company knows that, like, XYZ customer said this about you, it's really empowering. It's motivating. It keeps people connected and excited about your product. So when I first joined Heroku, it was to help with their go-to-market strategy, moving them a little bit closer into Salesforce. They'd been acquired several years earlier, but kind of hadn't gone through the process. They remained very independent of Salesforce, and for both good reasons and bad reasons. And so when I was working through this whole go-to-market strategy, the first thing I realized was absolutely no one in Salesforce knew how to sell Heroku, and they were scared of it, and they didn't want to. They're like, we don't know developers like it. Yeah, and it's like, well, geez, that's true. They love it, but like, we gotta help these guys, otherwise they're never gonna help us sell Heroku. And so one of my first challenges was identifying a customer that kind of bridged the Heroku gap to the Salesforce gap. Which, no one, like, now, today, I think if you walk around the halls of Salesforce, most people can come up with some sort of example. But at that time, everyone's scratching their head. And so I found this company called New England Biolabs, based in Massachusetts. And what they do is, and this is crazy, like, I mean, the more I dug in on this story, it's just like, wow, this like happens. Like, I didn't even think about that. But this New England Biolabs, they actually supply research scientists, DNA research scientists, with enzymes and genomic DNA samples that are critical to all of their experimentation. And they come up with a system to plant these freezers across the globe in different hospitals and research labs. But the challenge there was that these freezers, like, all of a sudden, like, one enzyme would be out, and someone would call them up and say, hey, we need more, and there'd be a few days delay. And they're like, this can't be helpful. These research scientists, you kind of need your enzymes in the moment. You don't need them 4 days from now, you need them now. So they're like, this is broken, like, how do we fix this? And so with an integration with Heroku and Sales Cloud, our CRM, and there's another piece in the middle, they were actually able to build a connected freezer. So they now have freezers all over the world where a scientist plugs in their ID, so they know which scientist is operating this freezer. They know what enzyme this scientist is taking out of the freezer. They know when it's the last or the second to last of this particular enzyme, so they can ship out new, fresh enzymes immediately. So there's never a delay between the need and the delivery. And this was all done with the power of Salesforce. This is what we tell people to say. But it really was like this powerful story that started to connect the pieces. So everyone around Salesforce who had previously been so scared of Heroku, they start to see this actual physical freezer in the office. And they start to see people like, no, I can just unlock it like this, and I can take out this ice cream. That's great. Yeah, I'm gonna pace, I'm gonna try this out. But they started practicing this story and getting really excited about it. And it started to become a story they could tell. They could sell Heroku. They could sell the connection of Heroku to Sales Cloud. Again, software, not sexy, difficult to sell, difficult for people to get excited about versus another provider. And this was one way that helped the salespeople start to sell Heroku. So again, still at Heroku, I thought, like, all right, we need more of these. We need more fun stories. Like, New England Biolabs is really cool, but like, it's a little nerdy. We gotta have like something sexier here. Being in San Francisco, and I don't know who here has ever seen scoots scooting around. Couple. Okay, so scoots are little scooters that you can rent, by the hour or whatever it is. They're really cool. It's, like scooter sharing. Never mind car sharing, we've moved on to scooter sharing now. But Scoot is a Heroku customer. So this was my first, okay, well, I need more of these things. Like, let me call up Scoot. I actually, ironically, worked with the CTO of Scoot back on trading floor days in New York. So it's very, funny, okay, I can tap into my network here, and I know I can get this guy to give me a story. I don't know what the story's gonna be yet, but I know I can get it. And in working through that, I'd never written a customer story before. And on the New England Biolab story, I had the help of the Salesforce team. So this is my first time. I'm scratching my head well, I don't even know where to start, but I guess what was their problem and how did they solve it, right? And that's really all it is. It can be daunting sometimes, and I know in some cases you do want to do kind of a real thorough case study. Maybe you want to document the technology behind something. But at the end of the day, start small. Again, back to get a quote. And really all I wanted from them was to tell me, what was your challenge? When you set out to build Scoot, what was the challenge ahead of you? What sort of obstacles did you see, and why did you think Heroku was the right solution? Or why wasn't it, right? What problems have you had? As you want to start to pull out, why is what I'm doing the right thing for you? How is that helping you? Or what have you achieved since you started working with us? And that's really all it needs to be. It's all that a new customer needs, and it really does make a difference. You really will close more deals. You'll be able to sell more, whatever it is that you're selling, if you're able to convey both the pros and cons of something and why it was successful for someone else. Now that I've moved over to HQ and I'm building Salesforce for startups, I actually started working with PR to get my media certification, which, if any of you have ever worked in a large corporation, is kind of a big deal. It takes a lot of time and practice and a lot of embarrassing moments, like videotaping you, watching your own interview, terrible, terrible stuff. So in the process of me being certified, I was told I had to learn at least 2 customer stories for every one of our products. And then me, myself, the only person in the company, also had to learn a whole additional set for startups. And I'm like, geez, I don't even know if those exist. How am I gonna figure this out? So I'm digging in, and thankfully, and trust me on this, if you search for Salesforce and customer, you'll find a ton of stuff. If you search for any one of our products plus the word customer, you'll find a ton of stuff. So I'm sitting there picking through, I'm like, oh God, well, how many stories? We have so many, how am I gonna pick some? But I found a couple that really resonated with me, and I loved them. The one that I loved the most, unfortunately, has the worst name ever. So Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, you may or may not have ever heard of them, but they're a publishing house from 1832. So think about that. They've been publishing books and other content since 1832. That's 2 centuries of data. And they're ready for present day. And so think of all of the information that they had stored everywhere on paper, on microfiche, on everything else across the world. And this was a huge, huge daunting task. They came to Salesforce. They were interested in our analytics cloud. So I found this story, and I'm like, oh, finally, an analytics cloud story that I actually think is cool. This is really neat. It's so much data. It's just crazy to hear them talk about it. But they've published Lord of the Rings. They've published, I think, Curious George books. Everything across the board. But what they've found in recent years is that they've moved more heavily into education. So they supply education materials to over 50 million children across the globe. Again, a lot of data. But they would never have really realized that this was something that they need to really zero in on, and they really need to figure out what they're doing right if they weren't able to see all of their data. If they weren't able to understand where they're selling and understand all of their vendors and their relationships. So by using all of our Sales Cloud and our Analytics Cloud features, they were able to kind of figure this out. And now they're kind of moving into the next phase of this company to really start presenting a lot of content digitally. So it's something where like we know now that our product actually really is helping transform their business. And this is something that our salespeople can tell other customers, like, no, this is a real case. Like, think about it, 200 years of like books, like it's a lot. And it starts to become a lot more real for our potential customer. Like they start to understand, like, yeah, that's a lot of books, like that's a lot of data. Like if they're able to do that with you, like, done, let's do this. Another one that I found, it was funny timing, so I was working on my motorcycle license, and I found 0 motorcycles. I'm like, what is this? How have I never heard about this? It's the Tesla of motorcycles. So it's this electric connected motorcycle. And for me, it became really interesting because no maintenance, no gas. It's the maintenance part. Really didn't want to learn how to do that stuff. So I got really excited. I'm like, oh, 0 motorcycles. This is a win. I'm going to learn this for my PR, like my media certification. I got to know this story. And it's really cool because when you hear these guys, they're like, yeah, we built this motorcycle that is so intelligent. It's doing everything it needs to do. And we're still dealing with paper warranties. We're still waiting at a fax machine. We're not able to actually communicate with our dealers when potential riders want to take a test ride. Like, this is a mess. And so between using our marketing cloud and a lot of our other products, they've now solved this for themselves. So these are all stories that I'm thinking through, and I'm like, all right, so how does this relate to Salesforce for Startups? How can I start to use this? And we've launched a feature that allows startups to submit their own startup stories within our program. So I welcome all of you to join Salesforce for Startups and submit your story. You don't have to use our products even. It's not really so much about our products, but helping other people in the community understand what challenges you've worked through and how you solved them. And think about that for yourselves when you're selling. I think that's all. I think I'm totally out of time. Sorry, guys. Thank you.